You know, it can be common for kids to be happy and content in the morning when they head off for school, but then they come home in the opposite mood. So why does that happen? Our parenting contributor, Belinda Palacios, is in today to explain. This happens a lot, I would think, for all age groups. They come home just sort of drained and disinterested in everything, right?
It does, and you know, usually you think, with your younger kids, because school is still pretty new and things like that, but it can go through any grade. It can even go through, your first couple of years of college, because it's such a different environment for you. So this is across the spectrum. And
the signs, symptoms they're exhibiting, kind of irritable, kind of sort of depressed, downtrodden.
And they can, it can go from irritability to kind of crankiness to all the way to yelling to, just complete defiance, and anything in between. And so, and you're like, what happened? This morning was a great morning. We had breakfast and everything was great. And did something horrible happen at school? And then the shutdown begins.
They will not talk about it. So what are some of the reasons?
The reasons is, going to school is, and especially for younger kids, but kids in general, I mean, you're tired. It is a taxing day. And especially when you look at everything that kids are required to learn and to do in the school setting, in the amount of time they have to do it. It can be overwhelming and a very tiresome day for them.
Not to mention sort of the social struggles as well, the stress of all of that as well.
That's right, and not only, the relationships you have with your teachers and the administration, but your friends, and we all know, how high school and middle school and even elementary for that part can be. One day, there's your best friend, and the next day, something happened, and then, it just becomes a really, really big deal.
So one of the other things too, and this is something that I think goes from littles to the older kids, is they don't have the coping mechanisms or the self-regulating.
That's correct.
Skills.
And as we grow older, we begin to get that self-regulation and that what is called an internal locus of control. And so, but you have to learn that. That's not something that you're just born with. You have to really develop those skills, and you have to watch them being done, and then being taught, and have people coaching you and mentoring you on how to manage some of the pitfalls of life.
So one of the things that you mentioned in your notes is this feels like it is altogether bad, but it might not be bad.
No, if your kids are doing really well at school and they get home and they completely fall apart, there's good news in that. And the good news is that they feel safe. Home is a place they feel comfortable. Home is a place they feel safe, that they can really express themselves, and they know that there will be support there and that somebody will be there for them if and when they're ready to talk about it.
Super valuable. So let's go through some of the things that we can do as parents. First of all, make sure that you have an open dialogue going with your child's teacher.
That's correct. Because if this, if this is really just out of the blue, and it keeps happening, this hasn't happened any other years, and it just keeps happening, call the teacher and say, hey, is something going on that I'm not aware of? Are they struggling with some, some part of the academics? Are they having trouble socially? Are they having trouble, in an extracurricular activity? All kinds of things, and try to, find out if there's something special that has gone on.
And you also want to give a kid a snack after school, right?
Absolutely, especially the younger kids, because they've been busy, all day, and sometimes school lunch doesn't really fortify you for a long period of time.
And they're eating lunch so early, too.
That's right, and so there's a lot of time between lunch and dinner, and so having that snack, because when we get hungry,
we get hangry,
that's
girl.
Right, we're irritable, and so sometimes having that snack and something to drink firsthand can really help quell that.
And you also advise to kind of sit with the silence.
If they're not ready to talk, don't make them. When we have bad days, we don't like being peppered with questions. We don't,
right.
We don't like people like, what's wrong? What's going on? What's this? We're like, hey, just let me be for a little bit. So our kids are the exact same way. So you don't have to, have this dialogue back and forth, and you don't have to ask them questions about what's going on. Did something bad happen? That kind of thing, when you can tell they don't want to talk about it. But you can say, hey, welcome home. I'm glad you're here.
I like that.
And open up to where they know that you're willing to talk to them when and if they choose.
And I think, too, you should do homework, give it a little rest, let kids kind of decompress. I think that's important. And then also, teach your child how to self-regulate, right?
Yes.
How to manage those emotions.
You really do, and this begins when they're younger, you know, and it just goes up, and of course you're gonna introduce more sophisticated ways of being able to manage that. But you also have to be aware of what is the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown, a complete, absolute meltdown. And you need to be aware of that, because when you're having tantrums, sometimes or just outbursts, you know, those are part of growing up. It's part of the development process. Meltdowns can be too, but if meltdowns are becoming more common than not, then you really need to look at what's going on, because there may be some kind of triggers that's happening with something that's going on, or something that's internal with them that is starting to blossom.
And that is your challenge, to really kind of dig in deep to what your child is going through. And
then keep track. You know, if you're starting to see a lot of this, keep a log, keep track of if there's certain days, if there's certain hours, if certain things are able to calm it, or if you're not able to calm it.
Be specific, right?
Yes, and be specific with that log, and you can go back and kind of look at it to see, okay, where are we at? And then you may have an idea about a way to tackle it.
As a special education teacher, we were very diligent about logging those sorts of things all the time. So it's really, really helpful and insightful. Belinda, thanks.
You're welcome.
Good stuff today. Stick around, everybody. Coming up next is